Hello beer tubers and welcome to another beer review with me, Peter, the master of Hoppets, going back to Franconia, and you will hear that a lot because I got loads of awesome Franconian beer to try. So these are a couple beers that I actually did not bring back from my recent trip to Franconia, but I tried it there. We're trying from Brauerei Zehendner das gute Mönchsambacher Weihnachts-Bock. But we're not only trying this one, we're also trying, this is the fresh 23-24 season bottle. But we also got a 16, might see that there, 17 season bottle. So when we visited Zehendner, this was not released yet. This is one of the latest releases of Bocks in Franconia. They released this in December, so we missed it. I think it was released a week after we left or something like that. But it's a golden Bock or a Hella Bock, strong Bock beer made for Christmas. This is a tradition in Franconia. There is this release of Bock beers, both dark and light for the Christmas time, also wheat Bocks, Weizenbocks. Loads of these small breweries have their own way of doing it. A lot of them are decoction mashed, some are hoppy, some are malty. There's huge variation. And they have another Bock season, which is the My Bock season as well. And then there's also the Fest season, where they have some stronger beers as well. So you get plenty of times a year to try and drink strong beer in Franconia, if that's your jam. So this, as far as I remember, we actually got to try this fresh from the lagering tank too, which was awesome. And I think we were told that it was decocted 2 times or once, 1 or 2. I can't remember exactly what it was. And then it was all Perle hops, very old school German hop, and then Pilsner malt, I think, or something like that. Just fresh local Pilsner malt and then 1 hop. Like, I was just like, what? It's all in the decoction and lagering and process, of course. And we had it, we loved it. And then there is a debate, like apparently it says 7%, but vintages differ. Some are a little bit stronger, but depending on the efficiency of the brew kits. Some are a little bit lower. Like it goes up and down. And apparently this was close to 8, as far as I remember. So, but what's funny is that we're going to be pairing it and trying it side by side with a vintage bottle. And the way I got this was through Enzo. And you might remember Enzo. I've talked about him in the past on the channel. I've gotten to meet him as well. He's the person, along with Brewed, who supplied a lot of classic German beer on the channel quite a few years back. And he was a person who introduced me to Zehendner, which I just completely fell in love with. Also a little bit Mikkel as well, of course, who has to get a shout out as well. A friend of mine and friend of Brett and Tobias, who used to work in Bamberg. So through these people, I got to try a lot of good beer. And recently, this was released on some web shops in Germany. I did a Google search and found a shop that had it. And I was like, none of them ship to Denmark. And then I was like, hey, Enzo, is there a chance you could help me get these bottles to Denmark? And he was like, yeah. And if there's space in the box, I'm going to add some vintage bottles. So thanks a ton for that. But with that intro out of the way, which is kind of long, let's start out with the Weihnachtsbock from this past Christmas. So it's a naturtrübes beer, and as you see, it says on the label, the bottles I had were of the other beers were very bright and clean and clear looking because the yeast was so settled in the bottom of the bottles because they were close to the expiration date, or exactly the expiration date, which is only 3 months. You want to drink this really fresh, maybe besides the strong ones. So usually when you get a Mönchsambacher beer, Zehendner beer, you see that they're slightly cloudy because they're naturtrübes, and then you'll initially think, oh, it's a Keller beer. Not necessarily. If in Germany it says Naturtrüb on the bottle, it can mean that it's unfiltered. So you might get some haze, although they don't call it a Keller beer. They might call it a Pils. They might call it a Bock. Like there's so many small different nuances depending on where you're traveling in the country. And especially also just in Franconia. So, but it looks nice. It's bright, vibrant yellow. It has a slight coppery hue, and that must be because of decoction mashing. Very frothy, pillowy white head. Looks very much lively and nice. Let's check out the aroma. Thanks a ton for helping getting these, Enzo. Yeah, very hoppy, but also a really, really rich malt character. Like, man, the balance is one of the biggest things with Zehendner. Like, they are both hop forward and malt forward. And very, like, aromatic for, like, a fairly balanced beer style or easygoing beer style. But it kind of jumps out at the glass. But what is just the key is the balance between hops and malt. Like this is the true balance between those two parameters, which is what I get a lot in their beers, besides maybe this one being a little bit more hoppy than the export and the lager beer, and also I think their Maibock is a little bit more hoppy, but still really balanced aromas. It's a very old school smelling. It's pale. It reminds me of like a bit of a floral note, but like very like spicy and like a drying spicy nuance, and slightly herbaceous, like herby, but it has like a very nice, like, again, juicy malt profile. I've started to talk about this, but like really vibrant, fresh malt, like almost like juicy malt. It sounds weird, but that's kind of what I'm getting. Like this vibrant, fresh malt aroma, and then like super well lagered as well. It's so well lagered, so clean, so crisp. And what's really interesting as well is, I think was it 6 months or was it 3 months? It was like, this was lagered for a very long time. And that's like apparently one of the keys with really good bock beers. They just need to lager for ages. Well, let's try it. Cheers. Thanks to Enzo for helping getting us. That's a powerful beer. Wow. Surprisingly bitter. Not like overtly crazy bitter, but compared to some of the Franconian beers, this is much more bitter. I can definitely, like, thinking back, I remember it being much lighter. And I think that's just because we had quite a few beers before we tried it from this tank. But this is a rich beer. Like, it's somewhat decadent, really. It's got a really nice, drying, bitter, herbaceous aftertaste, like chewing on fresh herbs. So with the others being more beers that you like just tank down, this is more like a sipper. Something you sip and enjoy. Like, well, it's going down quite fast, but it's something where you don't slam it as quick as you do with some of the great lagers, because it's just a much richer beer, but it's just marvelous. The flavors on it is like this really, really rich layered malt character. It's like this hefty rustic breadiness. Again, some of these hazelnut loaves, but it has a whiff of sweetness to it. So a little bit of like, if you did like a rustic brioche, it's almost like a brioche that's got some darker, because brioche has a little bit of sweetness. So like if you did like a brioche crossed with some kind of rustic countryside bread or something like that, that's kind of like the breadiness on this. And then like this really massive bitterness to balance that malt character. Or massive. I'd imagine it's 30 something. But that's also one of the things with the bocks. They are definitely more bitter. And it has like, it's really interesting. Sometimes I associate like some rich malt character with Munich malt, that melanoidiny rich character, and this is just Pilsner malt. But it has that due to decoction mashing, which is like, it just has me so intrigued into like trying to do decoction mashing myself, because you can get so much more flavor out of your lagers if you do that without using all kinds of crazy malts. And it often just tastes better than doing it with different malts. I don't know. I've always been skeptical about decoction, but I'm starting to get convinced, because the best lagers I've had are decoction mashed. So I think I enjoy the lager beer and export a little bit more because they're more drinkable, more sessionable, but this is still such an awesome treat to have like once a year. It has like that peppery spice, spearmint, black peppercorns, white peppercorns, a little bit of a floral edge, also even a little bit of citrus. And the pear for sure, I think, is there. There is like almost like a sweet canned pear or something like that. These guys just do the best lagers, man. I think if you're not too into bocks, this, especially if you are not too into the lighter ones, this is maybe a bit more advanced because it's so rich. Like, I think there's some lighter bock beers that you will have an easier time drinking, because you can get some that are almost more like IPA-ish, like some of the Maibocks, because they're more crisp and light, whereas this is like so rich and intense. So I think this is more like, it's almost like a Doppelbock, but it's pale, really. Let's try and jump over to the 16-17 vintage. So this was made in 2016, so 7 years in the bottle. And what amazed me when I poured it out, well, first off, you can see it's more clear. It's still got a little bit of haze to it, but I think that's also due to age and oxidation. But just look at the color difference. This is a great showcase of oxidation. Oh, actually, it doesn't look that obvious on camera. You can see this is a little bit paler, but in real life, it's obvious. Like this is more bright and slightly yellow hued. Like it just looks much darker on camera. This is, I think the color is more like, oh, there we go. Something like that. Something like that. Stupid. But this just looks more bright and young and fresh, whereas this has got that aged look. But what was really intriguing me, this is very much alive. Popping this, it had an even better head and head retention than the young bottle. And I was like, what the hell? Because sometimes with beers with age, they can start to go fizzy and flat. Let's check out the aroma. Whoa. Whoa. Something happened. Something is turning sherry-like. That is, that's really interesting. So this is a prime example of what happens to beer over time in a bottle. It is heavily porty sherry-fied, oxidized. Like often with oxidation, it will be cardboardy and not too nice and papery, but you can also get sherry and port aromas, and I'm getting that. And there's something with the fruitiness in it that's evolved into like dried stone fruits, like dried apricots and stuff like that. That's really interesting. The oxidation is so heavy that it for sure overshadows anything else, which is a bit of a shame, but it actually doesn't smell half bad. Let's try it. Cheers. Thanks a ton for sharing this one, Enzo. Still bitterness. Still, the bitterness is just, it seems much softer due to the age. And the hops are gone. There's no hops to this. This seems more like a caramelly rich bock than this. It's really night and day. Yeah, definitely night and day. This is like much more like sweet toffee. It's got dried apricot. It's got those sherry port, mostly sherry, I think, nuances. But it's actually not half bad. But I do think I prefer it fresher. But there's something about this richer malt character that's quite nice. There's like caramel and toffee and all this, which is not apparent in the fresh bottle. It's more this rustic breadiness and all that, and rich breadiness. The breadiness is also gone here in favor of caramelly nuances. But I definitely prefer the fresh bottle, 100%. It's more vibrant, it's more crisp, it's more like, seems a bit more like how lager is supposed to taste. But I am debating if this is world class or early world class. So like a 94 or a 95, something like that. Like I do enjoy their lager beer and export beer a bit more than this, but it's still really great bock. And I also enjoy the Maibock more, even though I think I rated that lower, which I should bump up higher because of I've loved lager for a long time, but I just had a hard time rating lager high, as most people have. But when it's great, it deserves the proper grades. So this one, the age one, I mean, for an aged beer that's 7 years in the bottle, it's actually pretty drinkable, and I would definitely be able to finish the entire bottle. But I think I'm actually still gonna go around a 90, maybe 88 in that territory. Like, it was not a completely failed job of aging, but like sometimes these beers with age that just don't really hold up. They start to fall apart. And this feels like this is the edge of how you should age it. If you age it for a couple of years more, I think we're getting to fall apart territory. But if you guys had a chance to try it, das gute Mönchsambacher Weihnachts-Bock from Brauerei Zehendner, let me know what you thought of it. Again, freshness wins, which is often the key, but I still think it was fun to compare and try an aged bottle. I think the aged one though is, like right now it's fine, but don't give it more time in your cellar if you have vintages from 16, because I think after that it's slowly going towards like falling apart territory, which beer will eventually. But fresh, this is really good. So if you had it, let me know what you thought of it. Get some Zehendner in your life. Try and look it up online. You can definitely get some if you know people living in Germany, I'm sure. So yeah, if you had it, let me know. As always, comment, subscribe to the Facebook fan page and Twitter and Instagram. Give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed and ring the bell for future notifications about videos. And I want to say cheers and see you guys in another beer review.